Yeah, look, this was a strong message that the voters sent to Territory Labour, which is, we don't support you. You were a terrible government, and we don't want to see you for a very long time.
Yep.
And I think in the Territory it's going to be very interesting to watch, because I don't think that Labour's really going to come back from this. I don't think there's much of a honeymoon period for Leo Finocchiaro right now. I think they're kind of on notice already.
Okay.
Let's see what you can do, or we're going somewhere else. And I think in the next 4 years, that's what you're going to see if the CLP starts getting up to their old tricks again.
All right. Well, Chris Walsh, thanks for joining us again for a second time on the NextGenNorth podcast. You're our first returning guest outside of our crypto watch, so you're in rarefied air, mate.
Well, thanks for having me back, Stuart. I appreciate it.
After quite sort of the build-up of the election, it seems to have come and gone actually quite quickly in terms, I guess, of election night.
Mm-hmm.
We're still, seeing recounts and that type of thing, but now sort of the dust has settled. How have you sort of seen the wash?
Yeah, look, this was a strong message that the voters sent to Territory Labour, which is, we don't support you. You were a terrible government, and we don't want to see you for a very long time.
Yep.
Like we wrote in the Anti-Independent in the analysis, the revolt was quiet and ruthless.
Yep.
We were talking, I think, last time here about the pre-polling and what we were seeing there, and I'd said, well, traditionally you would think that many people showing up early were showing up to send a message.
Sure.
And that's clearly what we saw, that translated. So by Saturday, by the election day, everybody had already done their civic duty and did it quietly. That was the whole point of this, is that there was no polling done. And usually, typically, you'd have polls come out. So nobody really knew, and everyone kind of kept it to themselves. They did their civic duty and said nothing. And on election night, it started coming very quickly that this was going to be, a landslide victory for the CLP. But at the same time, really, it's a political bloodbath for Territory Labour. And there's no way to look at that other than Labour lost this. The CLP didn't win it.
Right.
And they'll have to go back and figure out what it is that they did wrong. But I would suggest, as an early hint for them, it's everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, the arrogance, right? It was just, Territorians had enough of it and told them.
Yeah. Well, I've never seen Anthony Green sort of go so early.
Yeah.
He almost had a bit of a shocked look on his face when he basically called it within the first sort of however long it was.
Yeah,
but it was, it was so quick.
Yeah.
So do you think it was a referendum on crime, or do you think there's some broader issues at play in this one?
I think crime was a serious issue for sure. We were all, worried about that and concerned about the crime thing, but that kind of became another issue that Labour just wasn't listening to the electorate on. And there were so many others. I mean, you look at the economy, you look at just about everything that they did was filled with lies. They didn't respect the public at all. They were lying to us about everything.
Yep.
And that's what the voters do. They'll turn on a government that's deceitful like that. I think, again, I always get back to the integrity stuff in politics here. I think that this was a government that had that stink of corruption on it, and had for a long time, really. You go back to the grandstand scandal. I remember that in 2021. But even before that, I mean, you had NT Beverages scandal that had happened where $10 million taxpayer money given to this company that folded a couple months after getting that much money. The grandstand with the Turf Club, I mean, that was just unbelievable almost in its arrogance and audacity that this government had. And even when the ICAC made findings against people, it was like that government didn't take it seriously. Michael Gunner, who was the chief minister at the time, didn't. You saw at the time where one of the guys who was implicated, a very senior public servant, is doing wrong in this report, and in relation to the Turf Club and how it got that $12 million of public money, was found to have engaged in, misconduct, essentially.
Yep.
Gunner then put him in charge of implementing the recommendations from the ICAC review. Right? Like this was the kind of just absolute arrogance that this Labour government functioned with for that many years, and people were sick of it by the end. And then you had the scandals like we talked about last time, where you had Files then resigning in December over the undisclosed shares, and also, that became a big thing too, because remember what led up to that was the other shares that we revealed that she had in a gas giant, Woodside, who was a major proponent of the Middle Arm industrial precinct, that proposal there. And then, shortly after she follows that and finally gets rid of it because she finally realizes that she's breached the ministerial code of conduct. Well, then we're reporting that she's hired a gas lobbyist as her senior advisor who's telling her how to sell this Middle Arm thing that will benefit the gas industry to Territorians. That kind of arrogance. And then when we had those shares that she had in the Groot Island Mining Company come out that she just did not disclose, that was the one shares that she actually had a conflict of interest in as health minister.
Right.
Just didn't disclose it, so she had to go. Lawler comes in, promises to restore integrity, which we've heard too many times in the territory, and without seeing actual results. And then you had one scandal after another. You had Chancey Pake and his shares, Brent Potter and his issues, and Lawler. And then you even had senior public servants with Andrew Kirkman and that stuff that went on with a court case with an employee that he had caused a mental health injury on, and she took no action. And then you had the ICAC and that whole scandal that happened there, which is still being investigated from what I know. So it kind of became almost too much, but it reminded Territorians, I think, of just how bad this government was.
Yep. So do you think the move to making Lawler chief, moving maybe more towards the centre from those sort of left factional...
Well, I'd say it was to the right.
Yeah, right. Well,
completely.
Yeah.
Like
I think that's... Was that a political ploy, but a Hail Mary of sorts, and was it too little, too late in your mind, or what was sort of the straw that broke that camel's back?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because what would have happened, and people have said that if Lawler had taken over as chief minister when Gunner left, and he avoided the 19 months of disaster that was the Files administration.
Sure,
that's interesting to reflect on, but I think
because it felt like she was making ground. All sort of
but she
scandals aside, it felt like she was making some headway.
She was doing things differently.
That's
but what she was doing in those few 8 months that she had was essentially campaigning against what her party had done for the past 8 years, right? Like she was basically running the CLP campaign on this.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody say that, it kind of took them to the center and said, it's just like with Claire Martin. I don't remember Claire Martin illegally ordering a curfew in a community, in a town here in the territory to go and arrest people illegally, I might add. That became the thing with Lawler, and I found shocking was she had these radio ads done up saying, I'm the one who brought in the curfew.
Yep.
I'm very proud of it, thinking that would play as a populist kind of thing, but it was in fact illegal. The first curfew was not done properly, so you had a chief minister boasting about breaking the law in a campaign ad saying, re-elect me.
Was that, sorry, just quickly, to go back to the curfew, was that illegal because of there wasn't legislative powers to do so? Is that basically the crux of it?
Essentially, yeah. And the police association was very good to come out and say, look, this hasn't been done properly. And in fact, anything could be challenged. So if you had any issues where arrests had happened, things like that, real serious stuff that could have gone on, there would have been things thrown out of court. There would have been issues. There would have been liabilities for the government.
Sure.
They would have been paying people. I mean, it was a mess. And then they changed the legislation.
They rushed it.
Rushed that through and then brought it in again.
Right.
This time it was legal. But again, then what kind of police state are we living in when that kind of thing happens? So, she very much took the party to the right. And I think, in terms of takeaways and stuff too, and everyone wants to say, well, how's this going to play federally now?
Yep.
I don't think it does. But I'll tell you, I think in Queensland, I think we see what's going to happen there. Anytime that you've got a Labour Party that veers into the right and into where the Liberals traditionally are, the voters just reject that outright.
Sure.
And Labour will be probably defeated heavily there in Queensland as well. But here, they had it from all sides, right? I mean, they tried to go right, and they played into the CLP's hands. So right, voters went with the CLP. But then on the other hand, you had Files and the party promoting this Middle Arm gas industry thing. The environmentalists clearly upset about that.
Yeah.
And it was very telling in those last couple of days. The NT News had a terrific story about Files. They said, do you personally support the Middle Arm industrial precinct? And she said, the Lawler government is proceeding with this, went back into a robot thing, but wouldn't say, because she knew in her electorate in Nightcliff that wasn't going to wash. Yeah. And so that was really telling, though. That's somebody right there, is a political opportunist who doesn't believe in anything they say. I mean, taxpayers paid for her to go to Canberra, where she, criticized teals and trolls, as she called them.
Yeah.
And so and invoked Margaret Thatcher. I don't know if that's ever happened before, a Labour leader invoking Thatcher, but she said the territory's not for turning.
Yeah.
The old Thatcher line.
Right.
This lady's not for turning. It was remarkable at the time, and then we were paying for all this. And now, when she gets back and she's not chief minister and she's going for re-election, then she kind of backs away from everything she was saying before. And I think Territorians saw right through that.
Yeah. So federally, you don't think that maybe this result is a bellwether for a future federal election? I mean, we've just had Bill Shorten announce his retirement. How do you see that playing out? Does Shorten maybe see something there in the future that maybe things aren't sort of tracking the way that they'd like to be, and he's sort of getting out of that sinking ship early, or how do you sort of see that federally?
Yeah, I don't know if we can read too much into that with Shorten.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, though, you've got, remember this gas lobbyist guy whose consultancy company was also a gas lobbyist, a guy named Gerard Richardson, was actually Shorten's advisor when Shorten lost the unlosable federal election. So, yeah, there's some ties there. But now, in terms of, I think this was really just this arrogant government that was lying to Territorians that got booted out. And, some of their biggest critics have been federal Labour.
Right.
I mean, I would have liked to have seen more action because they could do it. But you look at somebody like Marion Scrimgeour.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she has to be one of the fiercest critics of this government and what it was doing and how it was failing the Bush. Yeah, I don't see how this plays that much. I think it was just an arrogant, out-of-touch government. Depends if federal Labour become that. I don't think they're at that point yet.
Yeah.
But as we've seen with Labour parties, I guess they'll get there eventually.
So how do we sort of, I guess, reconcile what you said Scrimgeour was saying about Labour failing the Bush when Labour's the only seats that they held
Now
were Bush seats?
Yeah.
So
it's remarkable, isn't it? Because that's really how Labour started in the territory. They just had a couple of Bush seats, and then they finally moved into their stronghold in the northern suburbs.
Yeah.
Which I think they thought they were going to keep forever.
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then, so what we saw play out was just remarkable in that sense that they had abandoned everything that they stood for. And those, look, I know I've got a lot of good friends who are Labour supporters and been involved in the party, and what they saw was this group of individuals just abandoning and desecrating every principle of the Labour Party and the values that the Labour people hold dear. And that really was what this came down to.
Is that just something that happens over time where, you get an entrenched political party that sort of loses their way and then they eventually just end up trying to grapple for power instead of actually sort of staying true to their principles? And
I think it was such a mix-up of things, right? Like ideologically, they got in their own way sometimes. And, look no further than the Stronger Futures legislation lapsing, right? So they were out, Chancey Pake pounding his chest saying, this is racist. We've got to allow grog back into the communities. And, that might be fine on a philosophical level, but the reality is in the Northern Territory, much different than what anyone down south with Labour, philosophies may think.
Right.
And so that was really disastrous. And then to find out that he had shares in a company that sold grog. Yeah. And because we saw the record, we saw what happened when those bans lifted and the anti-government didn't put anything in place. Was the hospital admissions went up, crime through the roof. So that was kind of their ideological issues getting in their own way. Yeah, right? They were trying to do a good Labour thing, but it backfired on them spectacularly, and it caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. So then, that's really the only thing that comes to mind on something that they did where they were true to Labour values, whereas most of this became a government of self-interest. And that's what we've seen with the CLP before. And that really is, the message of Crocs in the Cabinet, the book that Ben Smee and I wrote about that disastrous CLP government from 2012 to 2016. Mm-hmm. Now, a guy like Michael Gunner misinterpreted that and to his own detriment, I guess. But he gave a copy of that book to everybody when they came in 2016, all of his team. And he wrote something in the front like, remember, disunity is death in politics. And basically
a bit cultish almost.
Yeah. And really, but that's not really in the book. That was what Adam Giles said on the night of his own political bloodbath when he's sipping the beer in Alice and saying that. Yeah. The book, Crocs in the Cabinet, and what that SUP government was what it was about was what happens when politicians put their own interests above the people that they represent.
Sure.
And that's really the takeaway from that entire book and from that term. And what we saw Gunner and Labour do was the exact same thing.
Yep.
They didn't learn anything from that. They put themselves above Territorians. They enriched themselves. They lied to the public about it. They got so arrogant that they didn't think that they needed to explain or take the public with them on any of the decisions they were making.
Yep.
And yeah, to their detriment. And then you end up with, I guess back to their roots where now they've got 4 members, Bush members. I don't know how they come back, really. I think that, look, what you're going to see, Stuart, too, is just on a federal level, you're starting to see this, is that the Greens are coming in and they're kind of carving out where Labour used to be, fundamentally, right? They're the ones talking about integrity in government. They're the ones talking about environmental issues. This stuff is resonating with the public here, finally, and I think the Greens will essentially take over where Labour was on the political spectrum, and Labour, because they've kept moving to the right, are just like a little, branch of the Liberals.
So what? This squeeze is going to be on. There's just going to be no room for him. You think long term?
Yeah, and I think in the territory it's going to be very interesting to watch because I don't think that Labour's really going to come back from this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that because we only have one house, that sort of changes quicker in terms of an upstart? Well, I won't say an upstart, but because they've been around for a fair while, but a minor political party that's now starting to gain traction and, a territory constituency that because there is only one house, if they're not happy with you, they'll deal with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great thing, right? That keeps it very fresh and powerful. But yeah, I think that a party like that's going to catch on more here because of that, because they have these kind of values and ideas that people are really thirsting for at this point where they feel neglected by both parties, both major parties, especially here in the territory. And then I think also what we talked about before, I was expecting more independence, I think, at this time. But I think that independents have a very crucial role to play in our democracy. And I could see more independence, too, because I think the party system, and let's see what happens with the CLP, but I think, I think the voters were saying essentially, we're going to give you a try. We have to get rid of Labour. And that kind of became the only option, right? And so we'll see what CLP does for 4 years, but I think that I don't think there's much of a honeymoon period for Leo Finocchiaro right now. I think they're kind of on notice already.
Okay.
Let's see what you can do, or we're going somewhere else. And I think in the next 4 years, that's what you're going to see. If the CLP starts getting up to their old tricks again, I think you're going to see people getting organized politically, putting up some independent candidates. I think the Greens have a huge role to play in that too, and getting some really good solid candidates, which they had some good solid candidates this time, but to get more recruited and to be out there and have a plan of what's going to happen next. Because, this is just a trial period, I would say, for the CLP.
A lot to unpack there. Let's maybe stick with the Greens for the moment. So it appears we've got our first elected Green Member of Parliament in Nightcliff, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
What sort of ramifications will that have for the territory political landscape?
Well, I mean, we're just going to have to see here. But I think anytime that you have more voices in Parliament, that's got to be healthy for our democracy. So I welcome seeing that. I thought that was a great thing. And we'll see how that plays out. But, look, if they've got some backing from federal Greens who've started to become a really well-oiled machine federally, you look at some really good initiatives that they've taken. And I think about the Senate inquiry that was led by Sarah Hanson-Young that came here to Darwin. I mean, they were really organized and knew what they were doing on that. And I think if the Greens candidate, Kat McNamara, now the member, I guess, for Nightcliff, can tap into that stuff, that's going to be very good for the Northern Territory. And I know people get worried. There's a lot of people who say, we don't want the Greens, though. They've got their crazy ideas. I think what you're going to see is the Greens have an opportunity now to explain themselves to Territorians and show Territorians what they're really about.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to watching that. And then they've got 3 independents that they'll be working with, I imagine, to hold the government to account. And those 3 members will be very important as well as this kind of moves forward.
Because we almost had 2 elected Greens members. I mean,
yeah,
that would have been, getting one elected, I think, is obviously momentous.
Absolutely.
But imagine if you had two.
Yeah.
Like that would really, I think, change the way people look at the territory political establishment and how their vote would count in future. I don't like what would that, what sort of impact? Because that would sort of seem to me to from 1 to 2 to 4.
Yeah, but the fact that it was that close kind of sends that message, though, doesn't it? Like they nearly picked up Fannie Bay.
Yep.
But that sends the message to Labor. Another thing for them to put in their little review, their post-mortem that they're doing is that the electorate clearly prefers the Greens over them at this point.
Yep.
And I think you're going to see more of that. I think Labor's just completely lost its way, and the Greens now have an opportunity to show Territorians what they're about. And I look forward to watching that.
In terms of Nightcliff itself, how does that? What are the implications, I guess, for the way that they're going to be represented in that electorate? Do you think?
Well, you would hope that it's the same way, just with a different person, right? Because, but maybe someone who's clearly more in touch with what the general feel is.
Yep. But do you think that means that they get more done or less done, or how does that sort of play
in terms of getting the government? Well, that's the kind of thing that'll be interesting, right? I was saying that some of the candidates have gone back on pledges that they had made because they didn't win, but the CLP got in anyway, but they're still pulling back on things. And you can't really do that politically. I mean, you got to give people what you promised or what you can to make it's all about making the territory better. So we'll see how petty, I guess, the CLP get in terms of that. But you would hope that they deliver for everybody. And we'll have to watch that because that will get interesting.
Johnston. Mm-hmm. So Justine Glover seems like she got elected on a real among a real grassroots campaign, a real groundswell of, to use more cliches, of volunteers pounding the pavement. Mm. It seemed to me to be more like a traditional election campaign than maybe one we've sort of seen from the major political parties that have probably more of a digital footprint. Yeah. Do you know much about Justine and what her credentials are and what she might bring to the table?
Yeah, well, she's kind of a negotiator, right? Risk management, that kind of thing. That's going to be very useful in Parliament. I can tell you that when you're negotiating with parties and trying to get things done and politicians. So I think, that campaign she ran was remarkable in that she was able to, when things started going full CLP, with that swing ban on, that she somehow was able to kind of buck that in Johnston in a northern suburb seat where it could have easily gone to the CLP. And, that kind of was, for me, the takeaway on all of it, right, was that it was good seeing her get up. I think, again, like I said, just we need more a variety of voices in Parliament. It's good for our democracy. When that happened, I was expecting Mark Turner and Blaine to win, too. But that didn't happen there.
Do you think that detachment from a major political party? I mean, I guess it probably didn't hurt him in this sense because there was such a swing against Labor. Yeah. But I guess a detachment from a major political party. Do you think that hurt him in that?
Yeah, it's hard to say out there. Like I heard that a lot of ballots were just a 1, 2, 3. They just wrote it down. Right. So question how involved people were with it all. But any time that we could have more independence would have been good. But look, at the end of the day, what Justine Davis was able to do there in Johnston was remarkable, really, for an independent to buck that trend. Now, what I was thinking on Saturday night when I was watching it, and I was seeing how big a majority the CLP was getting, and this is just me personally, but I was thinking, this isn't good for us. Because you give another party this big a majority to basically do whatever they want. We've all seen it. I mean, history will repeat itself. And you also give a party that big a wing in this case for the CLP, right? That's now 17 members. That's going to be very difficult for Leo Finocchiaro to control. And there'll be a lot of people on the backbench who will be pissed off that they didn't get into cabinet, and they'll want, and there'll be things going on. Yep. She also had to deal with the good old boys, as we say. And you saw Shane Stone's speech when he jumped in front of her and hugged the spotlight, talked about himself, and just reminded everybody of how bad the CLP has been in the past. So she's got all of that to deal with, and I thought, we'll see. But then, by Sunday I was able to kind of, reflect on it a bit more, and by Sunday night I started writing the analysis that we ran, which was still pretty quick because everything's still, sorted out now, or getting sorted out. But I think the thing that kind of calmed me down was a cliche, as you were saying, but this whole political cliche about how the voters always get it right.
Right.
And you think about that, and it's like, okay, I get what they did here. They knew they had to get this terrible Labor government out. The only option that they saw for that, for the most part, was the CLP, another major party. And so then I think, I get it. I get why that happened. I think what we need in the meantime here is we have to look at other options of what kind of things can work for us that will work for our democracy better. And we had talked about that consensus government before with that Jerry would have brought up with, all independent members. And I think that that's something that's kind of caught on a bit. And I know the people in the community have been talking about it. So let's see over the next 4 years. As I said, the CLP is kind of just on notice already. But I think some really good things might happen. People getting more active and participatory in the democracy that we have here. That can only be good for us too.
If we could just stay with Johnson quickly. Did I get Justine's last name wrong, did I?
No, Justine Davis is right.
Is right. I said Justine Glover.
Did you?
Yeah, sorry. My apologies for that. But anyway.
Yeah, no, she's completely different. Do you want to change?
Oh, it's okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
Davis. Okay, my apologies to Justine Davis. Is she the first independent to have been elected without roots to a major political party in the territory?
Good question. No, I'm not sure that Jerry would ever.
I thought he was with the CLP.
Was it? No, if Keyser was with the CLP. No, I'm pretty sure Jerry was always independent. Yeah.
Right, so was he the first, maybe?
Yeah, he would have been, I think. Well, look, and then, I guess Dawn Laurie, I'm thinking she was an independent, but she would have been, I think she was mixed up with Labor first, too. I'd have to go back and check that for you, but I can.
Okay, that's all right.
But Jerry, definitely one of the best and most well-known independents, and he was independent the entire time he was in Parliament.
Joel Bowden, where to for him?
He's done.
He's done. But like in terms of other maybe pursuits that he has skills in, do you just sort of understand where he sits in that regard?
I mean,
because he's been involved with football.
Yeah, maybe he can go kick some goals and people can watch him. He basically said that at a press conference one time. He said, everybody at the end. He said, everybody, I've been named the 7th best Richmond player of this century. Okay. And everyone was like, why are you telling us this at the end of a break? And then I thought, is he going to say, who wants to watch me kick some goals now?
Yeah.
Look, inside the party, I can tell you this, that a lot of people, especially on the left faction of the party, saw Joel Bowden as being a next chief minister and a leader for them. And in fact, from what I understand from people close to him, that he thought that this was going to be his chance, that he'd survive and that he'd be the leader of the opposition and rebuild the party and come back. But the voters clearly had other plans for him. So, look, I want to see him do stuff. I know his brother's done some excellent work in the community. And he's a lawyer. Joel, I think, is still trying to finish his law degree or something. He started it. So we'll see what he does. But politically, it'd be hard to kind of come back from something like this now. I mean, he came in third there, too, I think, right?
Yeah, in the primary,
Well, Potter, too. I mean, these were people that the voters just did not like at the end of the day. I mean, that's all you can take away from this is that big swing against them.
Sure.
And there's no other way to describe it, that they just weren't connecting with people.
Yep. In terms of the CLP strategy, how did you sort of see that unfolding? Because, they went with a strong South Asian contingent in the northern suburbs and in the Darwin seats. Was that a good strategy in the end, or was it just sort of by default that the swing was against Labor and not pro those candidates?
Yeah, some of them, I don't think people had heard of. Like I was saying after the election, like, did we check? Are these people real?
Yeah.
Like, are they going to...
So they didn't really have much of a public profile?
No, and look, that was all by design.
Right.
That was part of the CLP's campaign strategy is really keep quiet. I'm surprised that they pulled it off as well as they did, and I think it took a while for people in the media to realize what they were doing. But they weren't putting any candidates up anywhere for anything. Nobody was commenting. It would all be done by Leah. It was a real presidential style election campaign. And in this small target thing with the crime, and that's all that they wanted to talk about, and we try and get them on integrity stuff, and they'd make no pledge. I mean, I guess we got them to agree that they're going to do a lobbyist register, which is sorely needed here, so we'll hold them to that.
Yep.
But yeah, the strategy, the only thing that I can give them credit for on the strategy was discipline. That for some reason we didn't have what a politician in Canada called before a bozo eruption.
Okay.
There were no bozo eruptions from the CLP during the campaign, so credit to them for that. But really, I mean, that's not saying much. And the whole strategy of not looking like an alternative government for a long time, just kind of attacking them on the crime failings and stuff, I didn't think that was going to play very well. Like, you want more. I expected if you're an alternative government, you're going to start telling people everything that you're doing, take them with you. But instead, it was kind of the campaign equivalent of hiding in a closet and wait for it to be over and then come out and wave to the crowd when you win. And that really is it. I mean, there was no greater strategy to the campaign than that. And so, again, getting back to that idea that the CLP can't really claim that they won this. They just hit out, let the voters do what they were going to do to Labour, and they took it. Now, some of those seats were interesting, right? That, like, you looked at Sanderson. Like, I don't think anyone had heard of the man who won that before. The CLP guy, Jensen Charles, is his name, and I read the ABC story on him, and he's got media calling him from India or something. I don't know if he thinks he's representing India in the parliament, and he said, "Oh, the people, it's my skills." It's like, dude, you didn't. And then they had his campaign manager interviewed, and he's come out to take some credit for this. It's like, guys, you didn't win this. No, they did not vote for you for your special skills, sir. This was the swing was on, and it was a massive swing. What's interesting too is that Labour, if they wanted to hold that seat, probably would have done more. They didn't seem to do a lot there. They thought Kate Warden would just be safe.
That's what I thought.
I
I thought Moss, Warden, Files. I thought there was pretty much very little chance that they would all lose their seats.
Well, what's interesting about that though, right? Like if you look at it from a strategic point of view, that tells you those people you just named would tell you that they're kind of more on the left side, that the right would be happy for them to go.
Right.
So that they could rebuild the party.
Okay.
And so why didn't they, in a seat like Sanderson, put up an independent candidate that had a deal made? Right.
So you're sort of introducing a bit of a conspiracy.
Well, I'm just suggesting that it's more of the arrogance of this territory Labour, that they had their favorites of who they wanted in and who they wanted to rebuild with.
Yeah.
But the greatest, tribute to that was the fact that the voters said, "Yeah, no, we're sick of your arrogance and we're tossing you all out."
Sure.
Except for in the bush where it didn't really move at all, right?
Yep.
Like the swing wasn't there. Everything stayed pretty much the same. It was really up here on the top end that we saw all the action. But yeah, look, and that's all. I'm just saying that you could suspect that the right would want to rebuild and have some of those people not around. But now it's everybody gone. So the only way that Territory Labour rebuilds now too is with all new people. Like the old boys and girls in that party need to be gone after this. Like Eva Lawler comes out on election night and she thanks Alf Leonardi for collecting money for the party. Like, how are you doing that? He got mixed up in the whole grandstand thing. He lost his job over that. He had to resign. He was writing the application for the Turf Club as Michael Gunner's chief of staff. He filled out the application to get the money. So Gunner knew right away he had to go, so he was gone. But then he just was hanging out in the lobby here, and clearly with, brown paper bags.
Yep.
I don't understand why the arrogance of them to put him in charge of fundraising and getting donations, a guy who's got serious questions of his credibility. It's just that's the kind of stuff that went on here, right, with Labour for so many years. And you look at, and then she was thanking Shlok Sharma for running the campaign. Like, what the hell were they doing with him running the campaign? He's a candidate. He's got his own issues to worry about. But he was kind of Kent Rowe's understudy, so they brought him in because Kent's in jail for his sex crimes against a child, which they defended again. Anyway, this party was completely out of control, and the only way they may be able to come back is with all new people. But that whole generation of Labour people just need to go at this point, and the voters made that very clear.
So Eva lost her seat as the sitting chief minister. Dennis Burke did the same in 2001 after, was it 28 years, I think, of CLP government. Gilesy lost his in 2016 as a sitting chief. What sort of impact does it have on a political party for their sitting chief minister to lose their seat in an election? Because, it took the first time the CLP got rolled, it took them 3 terms. They're in the weeds for a long time.
Yeah.
And then it's taken the CLP now 2 terms to return to government. How do you sort of see that for Labor now, being decimated and their chief losing her seat?
Yeah, well, that's it, right? That is a very strong message that the voters reject everything that you've done.
But does it almost guarantee like a 2-term?
Yeah. I mean, look, if the history shows that, I'm sure that will happen again.
Yep.
And like I said, like I don't even know how they come back now. I think Selena Yubo, I think that's a strong, that was a good choice.
Yep.
For the opposition leader. And I think she's likable. And so she may be able to claw back something.
Yep. Do you think she has that Leah Finocchiaro-like tenacity to be able to sort of rebuild a decimated political party over a long period?
Yeah, that's still to be seen, I guess. But look, as long as she doesn't do the robot thing. So I was at her first press conference as opposition leader when she was elected that day.
Yeah.
And we just got a lot of responses. We were asking her, well, what went wrong? What do you think went wrong with this election? And she said, we're doing a review, territory labor with the federal branch, and we'll do a review and we'll think about these things. And so I was waiting for her to get a little more comfortable. And I said, in the press conference about 10 minutes in, and I said, why don't you, though, you are the leader, why don't you tell us what your gut instinct is? Like, what do you think cost labor this election? Why were you defeated that badly? And she just went back to, this is what we're doing with federal labor. And then I said, well, now you keep bringing up federal labor. Are they going to be dictating your leadership to you? Remember, you are the boss. And no, that won't happen. I think if she gets to a place where she's doing what Files did, which is this robot routine with pre-programmed lines, the party's going to be gone for a very long time. Now, if she gets out and is herself and is as personable as she normally is, and the way she speaks to people, she'll get them on board with her and bring them back. But, that's one of the big challenges that any leader would have. And that was so interesting to see, Lawler being the leader lose her seat like that. But it meant that the renewal had to come, and that, and like I said, the only way they really get back is if Selena Yubo is as good as she can be, and they get rid of a lot of the people in the back room here who brought that level of
just
arrogance.
To clean out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
So do you think Chancey made a run? Do you have any sort of intel on what happened there?
No.
Or do you think he's got sort of federal ambitions or what?
Well, look, I mean, he always has, but it was clear on election night when he was asked by Tom Morgan at ABC, like, are you going to put your ad in to be leader? And he was going to, most definitely. So either something happened and he didn't, though I would suspect that he did. And they kind of rushed that out, right? So they had that caucus meeting that morning, I think the Tuesday morning. And then he goes on Facebook and puts out a thing saying, no, it's not my time to be leader. I've held all these positions, and so I let somebody else do it. It's like, I asked Selena Yubo that. I said, is he just Nicole Manison us on this? You remember Nicole Manison had told everybody, I'll be the next chief minister. And then, and then the next day or something, hours later, she's saying, I've decided I want to spend more time with my family.
Yeah.
And it's because you lost, because you put your hand up and you lost. And so the question is that what happened with Chancey? Probably. I mean, most likely. And you've got, but you've got those members in there now where, look, and Files was involved in that vote.
Yeah.
I'd written the story because I had asked Selena, or somebody had asked Selena at the press conference, and it was unclear what she was saying. And then I saw the NT News reported she was there. I was trying to get a hold of them. I went back and I listened to the audio, and it was unclear if she had been there. But then I got to confirm the next morning that she was in the room. But then you had Manuel Brown from Arafura, and now Deputy Duran Young. So, it's a small team. So we'll see what happens. The other interesting thing I was thinking about, Stuart, is this. I don't know if you remember this, but back in, would have been early 2020, I think, before Territory Alliance became a party,
Okay.
there were a group of independents. It was Robin Lamley, Terry Mills, and Yingi Aguyala, and I think Keezy Purk was involved in that. Well, they matched the number. They had the same number of seats as the CLP opposition then. And so they tried to get opposition status as a group of independents,
Right.
a kind of coalition of independents. And it was very interesting. And we're at that kind of place now where we've got the Greens and 3 independents, and then you've got 4 Labor members. Will there be some push there? Because the resources you get are quite different. When you're an independent, and even as the Greens, they get next to nothing in terms of resourcing to do research, to get media stuff. And everything that they would need to do to hold the government properly accountable.
Yep.
It's really difficult to do. When you're opposition, you get a lot more. Now, what happened in the end in early 2020 or late 2019 was, it must have been early 2020, was you saw like a backroom deal made between the 2 major parties. So, if it happens again, Leah would kind of owe Labor the favor because they kept her in. Like, it was almost outrageous.
Bit of collusion, sort of.
Yeah. To just make some deal. Like, the grounds around that were never made clear what was offered and what was done, but they used this parliamentary tactic to just wipe out the independents, which I think we all wanted to see.
Yep.
What could have happened then, because any changes would have been good, but it was the 2 parties working together, and that's the stuff that just annoys Territorians now.
Yep. If we could just stay on Filesy just quickly. So I think, previously we saw that was probably considered one of Labor's safest seats, and now she's lost. Where does she go? Does she spend more time with her family, or like what happens to
back
her?
back to the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's really, her career's over. Yeah. I mean, I think she made some really bad decisions as leader. You don't do that. I was surprised at the arrogance that she would run again. I thought she'd just be done and do the smart thing and the respectful thing.
Yeah.
To respect her own constituents. Because you just don't come back from some of the stuff she did there. But she thought, no, I'll just stay on because I'm so popular. And, we were writing something and we said, are you taking notes? We were comparing. We went through Keezy Purk and what happened to her, right? And so she had a 23% swing against her last time in 2020. And she barely survived, but she did hang on. But she knew the writing was on the wall. Her career was over. It was going to be done the next time. And that was all partly because of the corruption findings against her, which are still very much live on the ICAC's website. So then she ran as Belinda Kolstad's campaign. And Belinda Kolstad's probably kicking herself for hitching her wagon to that fallen star and the dead weight there.
Yeah.
But it was what we were saying was, as everything with Keezy Purk was self-interest too. And so, but at least she knew that she wasn't going to win again. And we wrote, are you taking notes, Files? Because, look, even if she had stayed on this term, I doubt that she, it's almost a punishment enough for her if she had have won to have to go in every day and work with 4 people who rolled her as chief minister, right? They played key roles in getting rid of her back in December. She had just gone so far away from what I think her core values were when she was first involved in Labor, that there was no coming back at the end. And, and that's what we saw play out here. And her political career is definitely over. And I think it was over back when she was doing a lot of silly things that she shouldn't have been doing, like flying around the country promoting this petrochemical hub for big gas. She was just a salesman for big gas. That's the problem with that whole middle arm thing. It was just that kind of government capture by industry, and how, and they were even defending it. Oh yeah, well, we've got a gas lobbyist as a senior advisor here. Like, something is wrong. You people have totally forgot that you're there to represent Territorians, not the gas industry.
Yeah.
If there are benefits from it, talk about the benefits, but it just completely lost perspective on it all at that point, and that goes straight back to Natasha Files.
Yep.
So that's the end of her career.
So sure. Do you think, that said, and the share scandal, that type of thing, and then the damage that potentially did to Labor's campaign, do you think the wheels were already in motion and the rot had sort of set in before Lawler took the helm, and whether or not Lawler had gone to the right, and sort of promoted that tough on crime, pro gas sort of message. Do you think the rot had already set in and it was almost a poison chalice for Lawler?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's right, Stuart. And Lawler said that on election night too, right? Like the voters made up their minds a long time ago.
Right. So you think that was accurate?
To a degree, yeah.
Yep.
But also she needs to accept the responsibility,
sure.
The blame, because she didn't take action when she should have. She didn't do things that would have restored, I think, some faith that the Labour Party had integrity and knew what it was doing. And it was just, by that point, became whatever works to get us reelected. That was the name of the game by that point, by those last 8 months. So like I said, we'll see where the party goes, but not looking bright.
In terms of sort of some more broader observations, do you think the two candidate preferred voting system is working? Yes, no?
That's a great question, because look, there are bad things about it. Never had that in Canada when I was there.
I think it's mainly Australia and then maybe some parts of the US.
Yeah, do they? Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. There's always going to be problems with like every system that you have here, and there is in Canada with our first past post stuff.
Yep.
I think, look, when you look at it, I guess, it's hard to say.
Sorry, I put you on the spot there a bit.
Representative of what voters want. And so there is, I think it addresses that issue of
more of a majority type thing.
Sure. Or at least the majority saying we don't want you.
Yep. Because like we end up in a situation where I think it was Nycliffe where the candidate that wins ended up with 22% of the primary vote.
And that's
So that's maybe a drawback of it.
It is.
But
it is.
Because more people had her as maybe their second choice, it's seen as more democratic. Is that sort of the wash?
Yeah, I think that's how we got to take it, and until there's a discussion around changing that. But you know what was weird there at the Nycliffe, because they only had two Canada preferred, and it was ALP, CLP for the whole thing, and then they just flipped it the other day, right? And then I sent them questions to the NTC side, so what's going on here? And they said, well, in this case, we did a three-party preferred. And I said, oh, okay, sure. What the hell are you talking about? Like, how do you just make up now it's not going to be two-party anymore, it'll be three-party?
And they're operating within the parameters to do that?
I think it was just poorly worded.
Okay.
Because I think they started counting the independent candidates' votes, but against everybody. Yeah, it was very strange. I still have some questions about that. It was never resolved. Well, I think it was just poorly worded.
Okay, but does then that open up doubts about the integrity of the system when you get comments like that from the Electoral Commission? Is that,
Well, I think their media person, that was not the best way to explain it. And they put out a release later saying the same thing, three-party preferred, and it's like, well, no, I don't think that's how this is supposed to work.
Okay.
I think it was just poorly worded. Right. I think we can have every confidence, and I'll tell you what, like Labour knows, Labour's been around a long time. If they thought that there was an issue there, they'd be all over it and contesting it. So
fair enough.
I think we can still have faith in our.
Well, I still have faith in our political
systems.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of who gets cabinet positions, do you have any guesses? Maybe some of the members with existing shadow portfolios. Do you think that they stroll into cabinet positions? Do they not? Do the members that have been elected on some strong percentage of votes, do they maybe hold some more sway in that sense?
That's valid. It's going to be political. Everything's political, so this will be whatever advantages Leah Finocchiaro as the leader, right?
Right.
Now, she'd be unwise to, I think she's got to do the mafia type of thing. Keep your friends close and enemies closer. So I think there's going to be some people who maybe haven't agreed with her in the past in cabinet. I think that's the proper way to do it, because as I was telling you, you don't want that big of a backbench, and you don't want some powerful people on the backbench sniping at her leadership and getting the numbers done. And we know how the CLP operate. They're political animals like that, which will be interesting to see, and I think she'll be in the firing line from people in her own party. Anyway, she was before, right? This is a leader who lost 5 straight elections, including the last 2020 general election and then 4 by-elections while she was leader. And people wanted her gone last year in the party, and she kind of stared them down and stood her ground. And
Well, she did say that she would resign as opposition leader if she wasn't. Well, if
She
the
didn't
CLP,
win this time.
CLP didn't win government.
holy, yeah, but that would be 6 last.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, she would have the record as the
Right.
most losingest politician in Australian history, I'm
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
So she pulled out the win. Now, what she said is that she'll do a cabinet of 9.
Okay.
So it'll be herself and 8 others. So what was they had 7 in.
7, yeah.
So it's going to be all of them,
Yep.
plus, from what I'm hearing, and then 2 others that'll
Okay.
come in.
Any guesses about who that might be?
Well, it's interesting, right? If you look at some of the things that they've done, they kind of tell you what's in their mind.
Yeah.
One was waiting until everybody was completely certified. Now, Barclay was a close contest, which the recount's probably happening today.
Okay.
But expect Edgington to get up, and so then expect Edgington to be in the cabinet. But you
Right.
would think that she was waiting to make sure that that was all formalized
Sure.
and officially done. Also, I heard on local radio that they put up for panel discussion the candidate for Port Darwin,
Robin.
Cahill.
Cahill.
Yeah. And she was extremely good on that program and getting the CLP's policies across to people, I thought, when I listened to
She's
it.
got expertise in health.
Yeah, so I think you're looking at her,
Okay.
definitely, and the way she performed that. Again, yeah, Liam may see her as a leadership threat down the line, too.
Wow.
I don't know, but
Heard it here first.
I think she'll be in there, and then you're looking at maybe one other one, and they've got some good people.
Yep.
Absolutely, they do. So we'll see who gets something and who doesn't, and then she'll be picking a speaker as well, and that'll be somebody will want that role because it's like paid as much as a minister.
Right.
Get your own kind of lounge area, and so. We'll see what they get out of it, but I just hope they stay focused on what's important to Territorians, and they do have some good people who can make some really positive contributions to territory. So I hope they're utilized to the best of their potential.
In terms of high-level bureaucrats, do you see there being much turnover to department heads, things like that?
Yeah.
Maybe the police commissioner. I don't know. Do you see him lasting? How do you sort of see that?
Well, that was really interesting, right? That first kind of day after the election, and she met with the police commissioner.
Mhm.
That was and the head public servant, and they'll both stay on. Now, the head public servant, so chief executive of Department, chief minister, and cabinet, is also cabinet secretary. So you'd think that she'd probably be looking for someone else because you got to have somebody really close in there. Although Ken Davies has done a good job, he's been in a lot of roles in the public service
for
here
various governments too, right?
Yeah, for a very long
If you
time.
can survive in that environment,
So I
hopefully
think
doing something right. Yeah.
So I think he, she said, so he's going to stick around for now anyway,
Okay.
and also the police commissioner. Now, what she said with the police commissioner was something even further that we thought, well, you didn't have to go that far. But she said, I stand arm in arm here or something, or
Right.
fully support
Mhm.
Michael Murphy as police commissioner. Now, that'll be interesting because, of course, we know there's a lot of issues inside the police right now,
Sure.
as there has been for a while since the Chalker days, really, and even before that, but most recently the Chalker days. And there's still a sense in the police force from real members that things haven't been cleared up or cleaned out
Okay.
as much as they should have, even after Chalker left the role. That the executive pretty much staying the same as when Chalker was in there. So she's going to get pressure. Definitely to do something, and she's taken the police portfolio, so she will be the responsible minister. The other interesting thing that she said, though, and this was a little disturbing maybe, was that, and we asked her, are you going to hold that parliamentary inquiry into police, into the problems in the police force? That attrition rate was just like through the roof. And she had called for it 7 times. While in opposition, then we need a parliamentary inquiry. She said the Vince Kelly review didn't go far enough. It was done behind closed doors. We didn't get to see enough of that. So she said we need a parliamentary inquiry. So then the first press conference after she was sworn in, she came out. She only took 3 questions that day. And so I was lucky enough to get that one in. And I said, but what about this inquiry you want to hold into police? Will you do that? And she waffled on, and I said, sorry, just to be clear, are you ruling that out now? And essentially, she was rolling it out.
Yep.
So everything that she had said, she now gets into power and does not want to have to look at the problems in the police force. So
Right.
it does not bode well for the future. And I saw people saying, oh, well, she's got all the power now. She can just make whatever changes she wants.
Yeah.
We want to see this. It's important that, when you do an inquiry like that into such an important agency as police, that everything comes out, that the public sees what the problems are and how it's fixed. For her to just arbitrarily start picking and choosing things, that's not going to instill confidence in the community, and it's not going to instill confidence in the rank and file police.
Do you think she's trying to not maybe fall into the same trap as maybe the previous CLP government did? As soon as they get into power, they started changing things.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like a stability thing? Do you think it's a politically motivated thing? Do you think now that she's in power, she feels as though she can rebuild the police? It could be a number of factors.
Oh, it's probably all of the above.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, the other issue is this, right? So she's taken out ads for many jobs, policy advisor.
Right.
Just out of nowhere, she now has policy advisors. So she's hiring for this.
Yep.
And I guess anyone can apply. But, the stuff that I'm hearing is that, there've just been some issues with some of the political people who came up from down south, didn't like how things were being done here, and have said, don't bother going up and working for the territory government. So, and that's, maybe some backroom people were involved there that weren't good for the party. It'll be interesting, everything, because she will undoubtedly, when Labour even came in, I think it was 3 or 4 chief executives of departments that they removed. You would think that would happen. You would think, too, that there could be an inquiry into anything else. There's so many other things, but this whole CLP campaign wasn't about that. It wasn't about restoring integrity or anything. It was just about us getting elected and, crime's bad. So, as far as that, we'll see what happens. But that police thing will be a big issue, though. And if she doesn't get on top of that, and I think really it just needs some sunlight in there. The way that the force has been run for so many years by a lot of, shifty characters. We saw with the guy before last go to jail for perverting the course of justice. It's McRoberts. That police force is struggling, and if they want to be serious about fixing it, I think they got to clean it up and let everybody see it before you just can't go in and make your own determinations.
Right.
Got to have some evidence behind it.
Is there some entrenched cultural problems in police? Are you able to just change from, replacing the top brass? Is that a way to do it, or is there like some deep-seated cultural things within NT Police that need changing? How do you sort of see that?
Yeah, there is, and that would take a while,
right?
And look, Murphy, and he made his apology to Indigenous Territorians, and he's brought in Leanne Little, who's helping develop the proper anti-racism strategy.
Sure.
And that is important work. Absolutely, it is, and that's going to take a little while. That's for sure. But you get to this point where the big change that if a lot of people want it, like the police members themselves, that changes the entire tone when you change the leadership and you bring in someone else. And, and at this point, I think we're at the point where we need someone from outside the territory. And I know some cops wouldn't like that, but some cops have even said that. We've just got too much of this internal stuff that's gone on since the Chalker days that needs to just be gone and a refresh happen, and you might as well do it while you got a new government and then a refresh there. So, but we'll see what happens. That is something to watch, though. That issue with the police.
To use an Americanism, and we can finish on this one if you like. How do you see the first 100 days of Aliyah Finocchiaro-led CLP government?
First 100 days. Look, the policies, right? The Declan's Law stuff. That's what she's focused on, and she's saying, it's always funny when governments win, and they said, no, we got a mandate to do this, this, and this, and it's well, no, we didn't actually vote for that.
Yeah.
But, they've got a mandate. I guess they're going to tackle this crime issue, so expect that to be a big thing.
Yep.
This Declan's Law thing, talking to people who know this, I don't think it's going to change much in terms of keeping anyone safer on the street.
Right.
But they're going to do what they can to at least provide that appearance that they're changing things here. So I think, you'll see that focus on that. She was asked, I guess, the other day about the voluntary assisted dying. And she said that's not a priority. And she's right. It's not a priority for anyone in the Northern Territory. And I can tell you, when we do stories about it, the reads are so minuscule.
Really?
Yeah. Look, 30 years ago, this was a very serious issue.
Well, it's fascinating because the NT led led the vanguard on this, didn't they? Like with Nitschke and that was with
Marshall Perrin and him changing, and then the feds coming in and overturning it, and that became like a real historical thing for the territory.
Yep.
But we're at a point now where I think we've grown too, but everywhere else it's acceptable now in the country, and you can go and do it. And so, I think we got to eventually get there and be up to date with everyone else, with every other state and territory, and we'll get there. But I can tell you that was not a big pressing issue.
Does that? Sorry, just to cut you off. Does that mean that we've regressed in a sense over the last 30 years? Is there a way for the territory to get back to that sort of really blue sky thinking where we can be the leaders in social policy, economic policy, cultural policy, all that type of thing to improve people's lives and become more progressive maybe?
Yeah.
Have we lost that? Do we need new leaders with vision? How do we how do we go back to that?
Yeah, that's great. That's the best question here. $1 million question on this is I mean, all of those things we need to be, and I think we can be. And I think, when you change a government, you've got a lot of fresh people coming in with fresh ideas. Let's hope that they're not kind of boxed, some of them, and put away, because that diversity that we have is great for making us better, and diversity of ideas when people come into Parliament. That's what I want to see. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, we were kind of at the vanguard 30 years ago, and since then everything's kind of not. We've really struggled as the territory. And
well, no, sorry, just an observation, but like I know in my time in the NT government, whenever we tried to do something novel or new, it was like, what are the other states doing? Yeah. And do you think we fall into that trap politically as well?
Oh yeah. And the only way we're going to survive and thrive is if we do things differently and only in the territory way. Yeah, that's tailored for the territory. And so far, our political leaders haven't done that in the last generation. We need to get those ideas. We need to, and I'm telling you, there are some good people in Parliament right now in this new assembly that will come in that have some really good ideas about fixing the territory and making the territory as good as it could be and can be. And that's overall what we all want to see, and that's the game really here, is to what kind of ideas can we bring that advance the territory, that addresses our unique challenges here, and not just trying things that have already been tried and not working. Let's just get new stuff here, new ideas. Yeah, so let's see what happens. We'll be watching closely.
Well, that's the whole premise of this podcast is, next generation, what are the big ideas that are going to develop the place and take us forward? So I think that's a good one to finish on. So, absolutely. Chris, mate, thanks for your time as always. Hopefully we'll get to see you again soon if you're willing, because we'll always have you on. Got to keep the new government accountable in all that, in all those senses. So, mate, really appreciate your time, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Stuart. I appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, everyone. See ya.